everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we host Immunocom. And before I turn it over to their CEO, I want to first do a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you on, please ask questions throughout the presentation. You can post them down in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Type them in and we will address those questions at the conclusion. So I would now like to turn this over to Amir Jaffrey, CEO of Immunocom. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir Jaffrey. I am the CEO and founder of Immunocom. And I would like to thank everybody for participating and giving us the time to talk about our company. I'm going to give a very quick background on myself. I've got over 35 years of experience in healthcare and technology. Had some early startups in my career, pre-medical school and then post-medical school, all focused around technology and the application of technology in healthcare. Ultimately, as those companies got acquired, some of them started working in major Fortune 50 and Fortune 20 companies at very senior executive positions. Wound up at Cardinal Health, ran some of their clinical technology business units, and then ultimately was a head of R&D and chief technology officer, and then finally head of innovation, reporting straight to the CEO, with about $4 billion of product responsibility on a global basis. So got a lot of experience both building businesses, but also at the same time, at a very large corporate level, what it takes to actually run a business like that, expand into large markets globally, regulatory approvals, and things of that nature that are critical and go-to-market strategies. So with that, let me share my screen here. So Immunocom actually is a very unique approach to how we modulate the immune system. Our initial focus is in oncology, but the technology and ultimately actually it's a platform that we have created really has applicability to most major disease conditions. And essentially what we do is we help regulate immune molecules that are normally existing in your body. And then what happens is in any disease condition, the disease condition will either significantly increase the concentrations of some of these immune molecules, or it will do something where it will somehow shield itself from the immune system using these molecules as a defense mechanism, or in some cases even cause toxicity related to as therapeutics are given to a patient and the side effects. Most of these issues are caused by what are called soluble factors. And soluble factors there's these molecules called cytokines. There could be some type of proteins, growth proteins. There's a whole slew of these that normally occur in your body. And then again, as I explained, what happens in a disease state is they're out of whack. They're out of equilibrium. The disease is causing this on purpose to cause the body and the immune system to go in disarray. So what we do is then we design our own custom molecules that will bind to whatever it is that the disease is whatever immune molecule that the disease is modulating. Our custom molecule will bind to it and neutralize it. Now, the difference here is from traditional therapeutic approaches is that our molecule, instead of making it into a drug or a vaccine or an IV infusion, which is normally what would happen, we actually stabilize it in that cartridge you see on the left-hand side of your screen. It's about the size of your palm, and that cartridge has a very unique liquid chemical type of a matrix that we've patented, and we can then take our molecule. Let's say I'll just use an example. Let's say we're targeting. I'm going to use a generic name, protein A. Okay, we're targeting protein A because the cancer cells are producing protein A in a high amount of concentration, and that is suppressing the immune system against the cancer cell. All right, we then design our capture molecule for protein A. Our capture molecule then basically is stabilized in that little cartridge. That cartridge attaches to a machine, which is called a plasmapheresis machine. And these machines are available in hospitals all around the world. They've been around for over 30, 40 years. And the patient gets a couple of IVs put in them, and their blood and plasma, essentially the machine pulls it out and sends their plasma through the cartridge. As the patient's plasma goes through the cartridge, our molecule, in this case, the example, will capture protein A, because that's what we've designed, that molecule to do. And that's the only thing that will actually get captured in the cartridge. There'll be no other chemical changes in the blood. There'll be no other physiological changes, no cell reactions, antibody reactions, none of that. Nothing else happens. It's a very benign way of removing something that is harmful, that is being produced by the disease. And then as the plasma goes through, we capture protein A, and then nothing leaks or leaches or changes chemically or gets put into the patient's body. So in other words, we're not adding any drugs or any chemicals or causing chemical changes to the patient's blood and plasma. All we're doing is decreasing the concentration of something that shouldn't be there. The disease is the one that's producing it. So we call this a subtractive therapy platform, and it is accurate down to the molecule level. It doesn't capture anything else. It doesn't have nothing else will bind to it except what we want to bind in any specific cartridge. Now, when you take this approach, you get a few benefits. One of them is that we have now seen in our oncology, our end stage, late stage oncology patients, that this is a very safe treatment. I think we've done over 2,000 individual treatments on like 75, 80 patients over the last few years. And we don't see traditional toxicities. We don't see the side effects that you normally see. We don't see adverse events. And the key other thing is we don't see degradation in quality of life. People's quality of life actually improves. Our patients, start gardening again. They start walking. They start eating. They're sleeping through the night. Some of them go back to work. And these are stage 4 cancer patients who have failed every other therapy. So like they're out of treatment options. Normally these people, pass away within, 30, 60 days. And they're severely debilitated because of all the treatments they've received. And they get into our therapy and all of a sudden they kind of get their life back. The tumor still may be there in some cases and stop growing or something, but they get their lives back. So that's one of the main benefits of this. The other benefit is that because everything is outside the body, we're not competing with any other drug or vaccine or therapy, the antibody that the patient may be receiving. So you can actually use this by itself as a monotherapy if the patient can't tolerate anything else, which is the case for a lot of our patients. They're at the end. You can do that. Or you can use it very safely with any existing therapy. And the reason that you would want to do that is, if we're stabilizing the immune system, and making the immune system stronger, we're going to improve the interaction and reaction of almost any other drug that's out there, because everything at the end of the day depends on the immune system to do its job. And from a regulatory perspective, the advantage you get is that if you're not putting anything into the patient's body, then you're not classified as a drug. Even though we're a therapy and we have a molecule, in Europe, we're classified what's called a class 2 device. With the FDA, we're classified as a class 3 PMA. Both of these are device categorizations. That means we go down the device regulatory pathway, which is much more streamlined and simpler than the traditional drug pathway. We don't do like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, all these very huge trials. We do have clinical trials that are designed with the same rigor. It's just that we can potentially get approval anywhere from like 30, 50, up to 100 patients, and we can actually get approval for our product. So it is a very unique approach. It conceptually is very simple in the sense that, okay, disease produces or causes high concentrations of bad molecule, remove bad molecule, right? It's conceptually very simple. Obviously, biochemically and chemistry-wise, and to do this in a safe manner that's effective is quite difficult. And and we've got patents around all of that, that are we go out for at least another 20 years. Now, where we are right now is we have gotten initial approval in Europe for metastatic triple-negative breast cancer. For those of you who know, that is a very, very difficult cancer to treat. The FDA has classified us as a breakthrough technology. That also is a very difficult designation to get. The year we got it, only 20 other products got it. We were the only oncology product to get it. It's actually quite difficult to get in that And they gave us breakthrough designation. Usually they just give it to you very one specific cancer. They actually gave it to us for all stage 4 solid tumor cancer, which is like 90% of the types of cancers out there, solid tumor cancers. So it's a very broad designation that they've given us. And what that does is that when we file with the FDA for our approvals, ultimately, which we're planning on doing starting next year, that you get fast tracked. The FDA, you get priority review on everything you submit, because they believe, based on the early data you've provided them, that there's a lot of potential, a lot of promise here in this technology, and they want to help you get it out and so it can benefit patients. We received recently a $2 million grant from NIH and National Cancer Institute. That's going to be starting soon with in Houston with the Baylor College of Medicine. And we have our own manufacturing facility in San Diego, ISO 13485. So we make our own molecules, we make our own products. So right now we're able to handle all of our needs internally. And as I mentioned, what we have really is a platform. We can go after multiple targets, multiple diseases. So this isn't a one and done type of a company. Oh my God, your clinical trial wasn't as promising as you thought. You're done, which happens to a lot of companies. No, that's not us. We actually have many, many, many shots on goal, in many cases with the same product that can be applied to multiple diseases. There's many opportunities to get economic value and patient benefit from that. We expect approvals over the next 2 years. Brain metastases, we're going to talk a little bit about it. We're seeing very promising results there. We're seeing the ability to convert tumors that are non-responsive into responsive tumors. There's a whole slew of things that we're seeing right now that we believe we'll be able to get a multi-cancer type of an approval, multiple approvals across over the next 2 years. As far as the team itself concerned and the company, I said I myself am the founder, but this is just a small list. Across the board, the company really has board members and executives who have done this. People who have built companies, people who have run companies, bought companies, people who have taken companies public, so been in both private and public markets. So it's a very, very well-seasoned team. And, I'm in our Houston office right now. This is where I grew up. And, as we say in Texas, this isn't our first rodeo. We've done this a few times. Now, I'd mentioned earlier that, what we really have is a platform. It's something that we can just go at molecule after molecule, and the list of molecules, it's almost like 60 to 100 molecules that ultimately we could be manipulating or affecting. And when you look at so this is a little technical. So our first product is called LWO2, just the name of the product, and it pulls out a molecule called STNF receptor, which has been shown for the last 30 years to be secreted by almost all solid tumors. And its secretion actually suppresses some of the immune cycles that are designed to be anti-tumor. So it actually suppresses the anti-tumor capabilities of the immune system. We have another molecule that's about to start preclinical. It's called IL-6. If you remember, during COVID, there was a lot of talk about IL-6. IL-6 is one of those molecules that if something bad is happening in your body that is really bad, usually IL-6 is one of the gang members that's leading that effort. So we're focusing on side effects, on blockbuster cancer drugs. IL-6 is one of the main side effects for these multi-billion-dollar drugs that limits their use. Even though they're multi-billion-dollar drugs, there could be broader use of these drugs. IL-6 is one of the main culprits. We have a very safe way of removing that. Now, if you notice down here, those same molecules are being applied to other diseases because, again, it's the same immune molecules. Different diseases use them in different ways to manipulate the immune system. So again, all these products have multiple applications across multiple disease conditions. For the rest of the conversation, I'm going to focus on LWO2. That's, as you can see, it has the most robust programs that that we've been working on. So for LWO2, really what we're seeing is all the patients that we're treating, by the way, as I mentioned, these are called refractory patients, meaning they have failed every therapy out there. This is the patient that the oncologist says, unfortunately, I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do for you. Nothing works. There's nothing more we can do. You just go spend time with your family. That's the patient. That's the patient right now that we are getting in our clinical trials. And as you can imagine, that is a very difficult patient to try to treat. and to produce some type of an effect. Now, in spite of that category of the patient, we're actually seeing some very, very promising results. We're seeing a significant reduction in metastatic brain tumors, which is a big deal. We're also seeing converting what are known as cold tumors. In other words, the patient's not responding to anything, right? Their tumor is not responding to anything that we have in our arsenal. So that tumor is cold. That tumor is immunogenically cold. It will not respond to anything that the body is doing, because all these drugs, at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is activate the immune system. But if the tumor is completely resistant to the immune system, it's a cold tumor. And it's been the holy grail of oncology to find a way to turn a cold tumor into a hot tumor, to a tumor that all of a sudden is responsive to immune cells. And I'm going to show you some stuff to demonstrate we're actually doing that. And then there's other, it's a very non-toxic treatment, so they're very viable, very safe. It's one of those things where the risk factor is quite low in making a decision to use this solution. The programs that we have right now, we have a breast cancer program in Europe, and most of these are winding down now because we're actually migrating to a brain metastases program here in the U.S. We had a melanoma and renal and triple negative breast cancer program out of Sheba Medical Center in Tel Aviv in Israel. Had a non-small cell lung cancer program in the Acıbadem Hospital System, the largest private healthcare system in Turkey, second largest in Asia, actually. So all these trials have been producing some very promising results. And obviously, we have the NIH trial that's about to start here in the U.S. But ultimately, what we're doing now is all of this is morphing into what we call a multi-cancer type of a study, where we'll be able to study multiple cancers all at once. It's a very unique way of approaching things that the FDA actually kind of prefers. And we're very fortunate that our chief clinical officer kind of helped develop this with some of the top leaders in the industry. So we're going to be doing that. And the first cancer that we're going to be targeting is on brain metastases. And I'll explain to you in a minute why we're doing that. So for brain metastases, if you look at what happens, so these patients that you see here, particularly non-small cell lung cancer, triple negative breast cancer, and even melanoma, but especially non-small cell lung cancer, the breast cancer patient, triple negative breast cancer patients, when you're end stage, when you're stage 4 and when you're refractory, meaning you stop responding to other therapies, which is what these patients are, your incidence of producing of the tumor spreading to your brain is anywhere from 35 to 40%. So 35 to 40% of these patients, the tumor spreads to the brain. And obviously, once it starts doing that, it's downhill as it is, but that really is kind of like the end of the end. And unfortunately, we really don't have viable treatments for that. You can do radiation on some of these patients, but again, it depends on where the lesion is. In some cases, it's not feasible. Surgery is also usually not feasible for many of these patients, depending on where the lesion is. So you're looking at about 35 to 40% of these patients should get brain metastases. Well, we've only seen about 10% of them actually get it. So we have 52 patients total. We have more patients than this, but this is the data that we've had actually independent third parties actually validate this data. They've gone back, read through all the scans. So it's not just our interpretation or our physicians who are doing the trials interpretation. This is actually a completely independent third party. This is what they do for Big Pharma. This is their interpretation, that of the 52 patients' records that we sent them, only 10% developed new metastatic tumors, not 35 to 40%. So it's a pretty significant reduction in the incidence of new tumors. And by the way, it wasn't like, oh, we just measured them over a month or so. No, I mean, we have the patients that are surviving, 10 months, 12 months, 2 years in some cases. And then of these 52 patients, 14 of them across all these different tumors, 14 of them actually already had the tumor had already spread to the brain. They already had a metastatic tumor in the brain when they came into our trial. Of these 14 patients, only 20% exhibited where the tumor actually still grew a little bit. 80% of the patients that already had a tumor, the tumor actually either stopped growing or it shrank. You had either a partial response and in some cases a complete response. So this data, obviously, and remember, this is across multiple tumors. So this isn't like, oh, this only works for breast cancer. No, we saw this consistently across all different tumor types, that when those tumors got to the end stage and they're supposed, and they're going into the brain or supposed to go into the brain. So we saw this. So this is something we believe that we can leverage. And this is why we're focusing on this, but this would be a multi-cancer approval. So this, any kind of approval we get in brain metastases wouldn't be, oh, it's just one type of tumor. No, it would be for breast, melanoma, non-small cell, kidney, colon. It'd be this mixed list of multiple types of cancers that the product could be used for, not only to help manage brain tumors and brain metastases, but also at the same time, remember, this is a systemic solution. It would actually help you manage the primary tumor also. So when you look at the market for brain metastases, this is the number of patients. These are new cases. This is the number of patients. These are the main markets that we're going to be focusing on as a company. So this is annually the number of patients that get brain metastases. And these are just the top 5 cancers. There's more than this. And at any given time, for example, in the US, there's 500,000 people with brain metastases going through treatment. This is just the new cases that you have. And then when you look at across this, what the revenue opportunity, the full revenue opportunity for Immunocom would be, if it got like 100% of the market, which obviously that's not feasible, but it just gives you an idea of how large the market is. And what some of the advantages of this market are, that you really don't have competition. I mean, yes, you've got radiotherapy and you've got surgery, but really ultimately for end stage patients at this point, you really don't have a lot of competition on the market. So there's a higher potential for adoption rate. Now, remember I talked about these tumors. These are end stage, and these tumors are cold. They're not responding anything for the immune system. None of the immune cells can infiltrate. And obviously, what we want to figure out, or the industry's been trying to figure out, how do we change this tumor where all of a sudden it's going to be receptive to the immune system? Well, that's exactly what we've been actually able to do. Our study in Israel very much focused on this, where we looked at a lot of these types of activities. And really what you want is, you want activation of things that are called killer T cells. You want activation of what are called NK cells, natural killer cells. You want activation of dendritic cells. Now, some of these cells, just by their names, I mean, it's like, okay, they're designed to kill. But the problem is they're not infiltrating the tumor. Well, in our Israeli study, on some of the patients where we were able to get very clean biopsies off of them, we actually saw, for example, this is a melanoma patient, and this patient had failed everything. This patient had failed actually 2 different types of the latest blockbuster drugs that we have. They're called checkpoint inhibitors, things like Keytruda, Opdivo, things of that nature. They had failed 2 of them, not 1, 2 of them. So this is it, and so here you see this patient that before treatment with our product, this is the CD8 plus the killer T cells. There's a few in there, but really not that many. And this is after treatment with our product. And you see all of a sudden these killer T cells just infiltrating the tumor. Here's another one. This is a triple negative breast cancer patient. This patient, you see this activation of this. This was a staining for a protein surface molecule called HLA-DR+. HLA-DR is actually a marker for NK cells, dendritic cells. So where you see HLA-DR, there's NK cells and dendritic cells. NK cells, natural killer cells. So again, you're seeing now in a completely different type of tumor, but the same type of reaction, where you're seeing a massive response of the change in the tumor environment, where now all of a sudden these immune cells that are basically the soldiers of your body are able to get in there and attack these tumors, and do it in a safe way where it doesn't create toxicity or side effects or adverse events. So this is a huge opportunity, and we're going to be doing more studies with this. There are hospital partners in the U.S. that we're talking to right now, We're going to be doing a lot more studies in this area with a lot more patients. But we think even once we have we did this in Israel with about 12 patients, but about 20, 30 patients here in the US. This is something we can do very quickly, very efficiently. And again, I think this is something that when we start publishing our data on this, we're going to get a lot of interest from some very big companies because almost everybody has a program trying to achieve this. And if you can achieve this without using a drug, without causing toxicity in the patient, now all of a sudden you can start combining with your blockbuster drug if you're Merck or somebody else easily and try to improve the response of your therapies. So when you look at across all of our different trials, just in generally what was happening, and this slide's a little old. This is, I think, data that goes back to January. These are all the different cancers we were treating. And again, all these patients were refractory. They have stopped responding to any therapy. They were metastatic. They're end stage. And you can see that, you can see that, a lot of patients, you see that in the survival is going out. The black is in weeks, and the blue is in months, going about a year, 8 months, 7.5 months, 15 months. This is actually now we have a patient that's out 24 months that are alive. Remember, they had failed other therapies. Now, this doesn't mean that all of a sudden, hey, the cancer is gone. In some cases, yes, the cancer was completely gone. But in some cases, the cancer we were just able to control it. It just stopped growing. It just basically became dormant. And they've been able to maintain a normal life. Even when they were getting treated, they weren't getting toxic, they weren't throwing up, they weren't having quality of life compromises, people didn't have to take care of them. And that was one of the things. Our patients love getting the therapy. We were very aggressive on how we were treating these patients. We had them come in 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And each treatment was about 1.5 to 2 hours. You say, well, that's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot. But once you start receiving the therapy, and if within a week you're actually feeling good and better for the first time in the last 5 to 6 years of your cancer journey, and now you're feeling normal, trust me, you'll spend a couple of hours a day, 3 times a week. So for the rest of the week, you actually have a normal life, and that's why we have found that patients, once they start receiving these therapies, are very, very receptive to it. And once the patient is receptive, then the physician likes it too, because their patient likes it, then the physician's like, okay, well, I'm going to use more of this. So this is the kind of things that we've been seeing. Now, the way we are looking at positioning the product, because this has a lot of uses. There's a lot of different tumors it can go after. There's many, many different ways to use this product, is really initially focusing on brain metastases, because it is a significant unmet need, both from an FDA perspective, European perspective, US, any neuro-oncologist for end-stage patients. It is a significant need that's out there right now. And then for end-stage patients, it's a very safe, non-toxic treatment where they're out of therapeutic options. And so when you look at how potentially the industry would want to use this, obviously you have this use case here, and this is a multi-tumor use case. But the other thing that it can do is expand the use of immune checkpoint inhibitors. And this is important because remember, when you design a very creative and unique product, that's not good enough. You have to design, revolutionary products or whatever you want to call them. You have to design them in a way that benefits the industry in the manner that the industry operates today, especially in healthcare. So if you design something revolutionary, but it doesn't fit within standard of care, it doesn't fit within existing processes, or it can be used in a way that physicians are comfortable using, it doesn't work. The adoption is going to be very difficult. Whereas if you design something that kind of fits within everything, and then here you've got these, ICI drugs, these are the big drugs. These are the best of the best that we have in oncology. These are the drugs that almost every pharma company that has a product in this space is making billions of dollars a year. This is usually their top selling drugs. And so if we can find a way, in which we think we have, is find a way to help patients, more patients receive these. Right now, about 20 to 30% of the patients respond to these drugs. And that response usually is about a year or so. And some patients have complete responses, but it's 20 to 30% of the patients. The other 70%, can't respond, their tumors are not receptive to what the drug is trying to do, or they get toxicity and they have to stop the treatment. So we've got solutions for all that. And that whole converting tumors from cold to hot, well, it would actually help patients who are on these therapies. It would help more patients being able to actually receive these therapies that today may not be a candidate. It would help patients who are already on it and maybe they failed previously. Now we've kind of re-challenged the tumors. Okay, let's bring them back on the drug and let's find out maybe we can extend their life in a meaningful manner, going forward. So there's a lot of different utilizations, of this product. Now, from a regulatory perspective, as I mentioned, we already have approval for triple negative in Europe. We are looking at including brain metastases. That date is incorrect. I apologize. That should be Q2 2023. And then we're also going to be looking at some of the other data. So our European approval, we're going to try to expand it, by middle of next year. Now, regarding the FDA, we can submit our FDA submission in 4 different modules. And the reason we can do this is, because we already have our European approval, we're already ready with all the information. So we're going to submit the first module. Our expectation is sometime towards the end of Q1 of 2023. And then every quarter, as you can see, we're going to submit the next module. And the idea here is you submit one module, the FDA does the review, you get approvals on that module. So you're done with that. Then the next one, then the next one. And what this does is when you submit your final module, in our case, which would be the clinical module, and that would be by end of next year, that the FDA has already reviewed everything else. 3/4 of the review has already been done and been approved. Now it's just the clinical data, and that, we expect the brain mets trials that we're going to be doing to be producing enough data by the end of this year, next year, to be able to then file for that, and then early in 2024 get approval for brain metastases. Now, it may happen sooner than that. It may happen, a little bit later, but generally speaking, this is the schedule that we believe we'll be able to adhere to. We are commercializing in Europe since we do have initial approval. And one of Japan's largest med tech companies, Terumo, they approached us quite a few months back on wanting to distribute and sell the product in very specific European countries. Terumo, by the way, those machines that I mentioned that our product fits into, the plasmapheresis machine, Terumo has 80% global market share around the world. They are the leader in that space. That's one of the reasons they were interested in kind of working with us. So that actually is happening now as we speak. Last week they had training sessions at the European headquarters in Brussels for their salespeople to start learning about this and how they would position this product. So that effort is already starting. So when you look at the company at a very broad perspective, we're close to the end line, essentially. And we have, from a de-risking perspective, we've got clinical data, we've got good results, we've got an extensive patent portfolio. And again, we've got a company where it's not just one shot on goal. It's not just one molecule, one cancer. Oops, it didn't work. It doesn't work that way. We have one molecule right now that can go after multiple cancers in different ways. And any one of those could be a very viable business for us. And we have other molecules in development also that are there for us to further expand our capabilities. And then obviously we have our regulatory approvals already in Europe. We're going to expand on those. With the FDA, we have a breakthrough designation, which gives us the potential for a fast track, streamlined review application and relationship with the FDA. And then we're already starting, our initial commercialization efforts. We're starting the initial discussions on other distribution opportunities. So a lot of this is essentially, already there. So when you look at, from a timeline, where the company winds up, this is kind of like what we're looking at based on where we will be. Our plan is that by early 2024, we will be ready to start filing for our IPO. And that is the game plan. The game plan of this company is that in sometime in 2024, so not in less than 2 years, we would be doing a NASDAQ IPO, because we believe we'll have not only the regulatory approvals, product approvals, multi-product portfolio, commercialization activity, some potential licensing partners in Asia Pacific. So we believe the company will be very well positioned for something like that. We have raised to date $50 million, 50, in the company. We are currently raising our Series C round. And by the way, all of our funding has come from high net worth individuals, family offices, things of that nature. Our Series C round is a $70 million round. 35 million of that is coming from a bridge, a convertible bridge. We still have about, I would say about 3.5 million left on the bridge to finish out. The bridge converts into the Series C at a 25% discount with a 20% warrant coverage and an 8% yield that's payable in stock on an annual basis. The Series C round, Terumo, that Japanese company I had mentioned, they have they have said they want to lead that round. So we're working, we've been going through due diligence past few months, and we're very close to finalizing a term sheet with them on that round. And we've got a few other people that said if Terumo comes in, they would potentially want to follow in that. So with that, I'm going to stop and take any questions.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you, oh, perfect. I was going to ask you to stop sharing. Did you get a valuation jump with your EU approval?
The EU approval happened after our last round. Our last round was a Series B round, and that was in 2019. So our EU approval actually happened after that. It happened in 2020. So we do expect a valuation jump, obviously, in the Series C, not just based on the EU approval, but also on the fact that, well, we have a lot more clinical data. I mean, when we did our Series B, we hadn't even started we had just started our human studies, but we had FDA breakthrough designation when we finished our Series B. And we were just starting our human clinical, but we had very strong preclinical data. So we do expect a valuation jump between the B and the C.
Great. Can you talk about your FDA endpoint? How much will it cost you to get approval? And part two, what's your exit strategy? Will you go public? You know, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So I'll take the latter part of the question first. The exit strategy obviously is IPO. It is to take the company public on NASDAQ. Now, what very well may happen, companies like ours, as we start publishing our data, especially on this whole tumor conversion thing, cold to hot, we very well may get taken out, because that's something everybody wants. And then we have a platform that can help them solve other problems. So at the end of the day, it very well may be that we get taken out. My preference is to go IPO because we can get, and even post IPO, have the company bought out, simply because on the public market, we'll get the multiple on the value of the company, and then any kind of an acquisition theoretically would be higher post IPO. But here's the thing: you don't control somebody making a decision to acquire you. A lot of it has to do with what their strategy is, where they are, and whether you fit or not. What you can, and you don't really control this, but at least you can plan it and do your job, is you can plan to go for an IPO. You can say, okay, if I do XYZ things in my company, I should be able to file for an IPO. Whereas you can't say that about an acquisition. That's just like somebody else's decision. So that's why, to me, the defined exit strategy is an IPO. Now, going back to your questions on the FDA, the endpoint that we would be looking at, for example, in the brain metastases, it is a ORR, overall response rate. That would be the primary endpoint, which is where the FDA is morphing to now, which is where their preference is. I just read a bunch of papers on JAMA and stuff about how that is the preferred outcome that they're looking for. As far as how much will it cost us to get there, so again, that's what the Series C round is for. The Series C round should get us through right at the point where we are, that module 4 that I told you that we should be getting approved on module 4. The Series C should see us through that. And then what would happen subsequently is we would then do a crossover round pre-IPO crossover round after that. And usually that round, as anybody who's done these things, that round usually is just is 100% an institutional round.
Thank you. Can you talk about your patents? Are they method of use? What is the average life of your patent portfolio?
Yeah, good question. So actually, as far as the type of patents, it's really a strategy that takes it from all sides. So obviously, when we design a molecule, we have what's called a composition of matter. The DNA, the plasmid structure of that molecule. So we have that just like every drug company does. But the thing with those types of patents is that you can do 3 degrees this way, 3 degrees that way, change this, change that on a molecule, and this is how you have drugs that do all the same thing, and they're so similar, is because that's exactly what happens. So, but we have that. Then we do have method of use patents. We have patents that are how the product would be used, how the product would be used in combination with certain therapies or certain therapeutic approaches. Then we have patents that are, and these are the really powerful ones, that's around the chemistry. See, what's unique about this is actually the chemistry. This chemistry where I can say, oh, your plasma can go through this very safely. I say it as a nonchalant statement. It's not nonchalant. It actually is exceedingly difficult to do without making some chemical alterations that are toxic in the plasma or something going into the body. That is very difficult. And that's where our patents sit. And those are good for another 20 years. Those actually are newly granted patents just at the beginning of this year. So they're good to like 2040, 2041 without any extensions. And then we also have patents that are around, some of it is around leaching. Leaching is something where, as the plasma is going through the cartridge, if any part of this chemical matrix we have in there, decouples or the bonds break, and all of a sudden now that's going to the patient, that is a problem. And so you have to prevent that. Again, that's where the complexity comes in. So we have patents on how you prevent that. And again, those are also good to like, I think 2039 or things of that nature. So, and we have a whole slew. So our portfolio right now, I think we have like, and by the way, these patents are not just US, they're in Europe, Japan, China. We globally, we do this on a global basis. And so I don't know exactly how many we have granted right now. I think we've got at least probably around 8 that are critical that are granted, but we have 50 plus that are in process. So we are a patenting machine, because that's when you do IPO, if somebody's going to acquire you, that's where the value is. It's in the patents.
Great, thank you. And let's talk a little bit about your trials. How many patients do you expect to enroll in your pivotal trial? And are any of these trials combination?
The pivotal trial, we expect at a maximum 100 patients. And as far as being, I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Are any of these trials combination?
Oh, combination. Yes. So it depends on the trial, and it depends on the indication, but like some of the other trials that I showed you, the triple negative melanoma, non-small cell lung cancer, you had both monotherapy and combination. You had both, depending on the arm that the patient was admitted into. And we saw actually the monotherapy arms were doing just as well as the combination arms, actually. In some cases, they were doing better. But yes, we already have looked at that. And going forward also, it will be a mix of that, yes.
Have you received money from grants? And if so, how much?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we did get a $2 million NIH grant recently, which we're processing. We're going to be starting the trial shortly, and we do expect to be filing, particularly in line of the new tumor conversion data and some of the other things, to be filing for a lot more grants with NIH, and we're fairly confident we'll be getting additional grants.
Thank you. What CPT codes will you utilize in the US, and will it be full reimbursement?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know what CPT codes we would be using in the US. Will it be fully reimbursed? Yes, at some point it will be fully reimbursed. That there are other therapies that use plasmapheresis, in their treatment, not cancer. They're a little bit more basic, and there are codes already for that, but they're in other disease sectors, not necessarily in oncology. There are some CPT codes there that I guess if we want, we could leverage those. They reimburse about $1,000 to $1,200 per treatment for the column, and then the nursing and the physician component, I think it's like another $1,200 to $1,500. I couldn't tell you, what CPT codes we would be utilizing. We're doing that in Germany and other countries right now because we're commercializing there, but US, I don't have that specific answer.
Okay, great. And do you expect off-label use for this product?
So I can, all right. So disclaimer, I cannot endorse or condone off-label use of the product. The product should only be used in the way that the label approval is. We do know historically that, physicians have the right and do use products off-label where they see benefit to the patient. And obviously that is something that they can do. And it does happen quite frequently in oncology, especially actually in oncology. It happens quite frequently.
Okay, great. Well, that is it on the Q&A. And for all the participants, Amir and his team will have all of your information. Everyone out there has my email address. I'm happy to make an introduction, to Amir and the management team. And Amir, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any final words before we close out.
Thank you. Again, I just want to thank all of you for participating. Hopefully, this is something that you will find is very interesting. It is transformative. There's no question. It is transformative. There's no question that it doesn't necessarily follow the traditional paths that people have taken. If you look at oncology as an industry for the last 120 years, every therapy other than surgery, every therapy that we have developed is invasive in the sense that it puts something in your body that is foreign, that is artificial, and that's why you get toxicity. That's why you get side effects. That's why in many cases in cancer, unfortunately, the treatment is in many cases worse than the disease as far as how it destroys a patient and destroys their lives. If any of you have ever been unfortunate enough to go through this yourself or through a loved one or a friend, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When my mother got breast cancer many years ago, and grace of God, she's alive. She was she responded, but her treatments took 5 years. And at the end of the day, when you tally up how much it cost us, it was $400,000. That is not something that is the average person in this country can afford. And we were very fortunate that we did have her on some good insurance, but still, significant cost. And what else had to happen? She had to move into my house, which I have a room for her. I always did when she visited, but she had to leave her home in Texas, come live with us, because not that the cancer was debilitating her, her therapies were. She could not live by herself. And she wasn't old. She was 60. So she was a very active woman. And she is again now, thank God. But the thing about cancer is it's not just the disease. Unfortunately, it's the treatments we provide. And I'm not saying they're bad treatments because they do help people. They do cure, like my mom, it cured her. But the price was significant, right? And it's okay. I mean, if you've gone through this, when that diagnosis came out from my mom, I'm in healthcare. My wife's a physician, she's in healthcare. We know the data, we know the stats, we know what happens. But when it happens to you, all that goes out the window. All that goes out the window, and the only thing you care about. We will do whatever it takes to fight this. And this is the weird thing about cancer. If you go to your cardiologist and he or she says, you got heart disease, that's going to kill you as much as a cancer will. But your response to that is like, okay, can you give me a pill? And, can you change my diet? What do I have to do? I have to exercise? What do I have to do? You don't think like, I got to fight this with all the gusto. But if your doctor says you have cancer, your visceral response is, I need to fight. And the word that comes to your head is fight. And what we're doing, it doesn't matter which product, it doesn't matter what approvals we get. The whole approach of Immunocom is to help the patient fight the disease in a way where the battle doesn't destroy the patient. Because that's what happens in many cases. The battle destroys the patient before the disease does. These patients that are refractory, that are end stage for us, that that we treat, these are fighters. These are patients like, I'm not giving up. And this is why they come into our study. There are other patients who don't. They oncologists say, hey, this study is available. It's non-toxic. Is this? No, you know what? And you hear this a lot. I'm done. Patients like, I'm done fighting. I'm done. No more. And I just can't take it anymore. And they pass away. So these patients we have, they're like, nope, I'm not done fighting. And we help them fight in a way where you're not having to go live with your son, which is not a bad thing, but still, so I've had engineers who had to leave their job. They were working for me, at Cardinal Health for 20 years, great positions. They had to leave their jobs in San Diego, fly back to Ohio because one of their parents got cancer, and they had to go live with their parents in Ohio to help them because the treatment was going to debilitate them. Not the cancer, the treatment. So this isn't economically devastating. It is a socially devastating. It is a personally devastating disease. And what we were trying to do is develop therapies and solutions where at least some of the social and maybe hopefully some of the economics, all these other things that the disease creates because of the treatments, we can mitigate some of that. We can give you normalcy in your life while you're doing this battle. We have patients who go to their oncologist in the end and say, you know what? I know I'm going to die. I know I'm dying. But I want to thank you for giving me my life back. At least my last few months, year, whatever it is, my grandkids aren't going to remember me as somebody shriveled up. My kids, and some of these women are young, by the way. These triple negative breast cancer patients, these are 40-year-old moms with young kids. And they don't want their kids remembering their mother, in a way that she was just in bed as this, modicum of a human being. So, there's more. This is a business, but there's a lot more here than just a business. And that was the whole reason this company was founded. At the impetus, my wife was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. It's just something that she was like, being a physician. So we're hoping we have found that.
Thank you so much. We feel so strongly about your company as well, and wishing you the best success. So. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Amir, for taking the time to present to us today and share your story. And again, reach out to me if anyone wants more conversations with Immunocom. So, thank you.